Mastery Chat. Kate, if that intro countdown didn't get you excited for this, then I hope that like got you pumped after a crazy chat, because I feel like those countdowns always make me anxious.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, cool, but also wildly intimidating.
It got serious, right? I know before we went live, we were just like chatting, like hanging out. And then I was like, oh, hold on, I have to put on this video before I click a live. And every time I click it, I'm always like, oh, the shuttle launch is beginning. Oh my goodness. Well, we just had an incredible Mastery Chat over on Twitter. We're now doing the Mastery Chat recap with our amazing host. Right now we're streaming in multiple places on Facebook, over on the Teach Better Team YouTube, multiple places on Twitter, and just anywhere else we felt like sharing this amazing video. But I wanted to introduce Kate. Kate, you had an amazing chat tonight. I want to make sure we talk through all the details. Would you mind telling everyone that's popping in for this recap kind of who you are and like what you do in education?
So I am a high school English teacher. I'm teaching 9 and 12 this year, but I've taught 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th all the way through. So AP, honors, regents, and I've been involved in social justice work for probably since the minute I got to college. The week I got to college, I actually spoke at like the International Women's Day like conference at my school. So it's been something that has been at the heart of not only my work, but my life. And it motivates my teaching in every way possible.
And that's so perfect, because our topic tonight had to do with our continuation of Mastery Chat's Conversation for Change, which we actually started this summer and just have continued because we know this is so important. We don't want anti-racism conversations to be a fad. We want this to be a continuation and have this be something that we're not only talking about this month and next month, but for years and decades. We want this to be something that in time people, really fully understand, because they've taken the time to become well educated and be learners and listeners and everything in between. Tell us a little bit about your topic for Mastery Chat today.
So my topic kind of sprung out of that idea that, all of a sudden this need to talk about anti-racism and social justice kind of popped up on our radar in education. And I mean, it's been the work of so many people for so long. I mentioned Bettina Love. I absolutely love her. Goldie Muhammad, Dina Simmons, all these seminal foundational workers in the social justice arena who've been doing it forever. But now it's so much more important because people are starting to take notice of things that have to do with racial injustice, and they're starting to become things that we can no longer afford and haven't been able to afford to ignore, because they're leaching into our classrooms, because the students who look like the people on the news are saying, my life matters too, and I'm here, and what are you doing to address that as my teacher? And as the person who's in my corner, how are we validating my identity in the classroom? And for so many of us, right, like the teaching profession nationally is 80% white. So we don't share those experiences with our students of color. And so it's time for us to start listening and say, okay, well, your experience of the world is the quantifiable evidence that we need to do better, right? That's the proof that
absolutely
that something needs to change. I don't need statistics thrown at me. I just need you to tell me that you're struggling and you're hurting, and that should be enough.
Love that. I love that drove your creation of the questions that you asked tonight. It was a very active chat. People really not only shared their opinions, but then also took the time, which should be happening in Twitter chats, to get into those feeds of really talking in deep detail. And that's what I love seeing every single time we know it's a successful chat, when people not only get to share their voice and their perspective, but also comment on other people's perspective and voices, ask more questions, learn further. I mean, that's really what we want in these conversations. Twitter chats can become echo chambers in a lot of capacity. And now when we look at what strong Twitter chats look like. We want to see people not just sharing philosophy, but actually sharing stories, tactical takeaways, things that can make us be better. When you were crafting these questions to kind of spark those types of answers, was there any questions that you asked that you were either excited to ask to hear people's perspectives, or maybe thought it'd be a little controversial? Any thoughts on that?
I thought that the entire scope of my questions really just came from a place of, we think of listening as, I'm listening. And one thing that I had said in the chat that really encompassed the purpose of those questions that I asked tonight is that people say I'm listening, and then it's also like you have to multitask while you listen with respect to anti-racism, right? You have to listen while you teach. You have to listen while you disrupt your curriculum. You have to listen while you tell other people why this is important, right? So people often get into this headspace of, I'm going to do the work once I know more. And we can't afford that right now, right? Like, people are literally, their lives are at stake. So we have to listen while also coming from where we are and jumping in front of the injustice and saying, I might not have all the answers, but I know this isn't okay.
Interesting. I like this idea. I've been hearing that a lot. Now that you say that, I really want to step in, but I want to listen first. And I think it's interesting because as you're kind of articulating, you always need to be learning. You always need to be listening. So when are you going to start then? Right? Like, that's a really interesting perspective. And I saw that actually as a topic of conversation as you were chatting with people and as people were engaging with the questions in general, of really being reflective of like, yeah, we have to start now, and then it has to continue, because like everything else and every other element, we're learning about everything as we go. And so if you're not choosing to take action until you're an expert, then it's going to be too late, right?
And the tricky thing is, like, we're all teachers. Yeah. So we're all academics by trade and, at heart. So we want to philosophize the problem to death. Yeah. And we can't do that while our kids are hurting. We can't afford to sit in a classroom and just rap battle at each other about the rights and wrongs of anti-racism while kids are quite literally dying.
Yeah.
And, so we don't have to have read every book that Angela Davis ever wrote in order to say, this is wrong, we need to fix it. And as teachers, I think that that's something that a lot of people lose, is read the books while you also speak up and do the work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Did you have any good resources you felt like you used this summer, or have been using just throughout your time, passionate about topics related to this, that you wanted to recommend tonight, that either you did in the chat and you want to make sure you emphasize it here for people that missed the chat? Lives in here and she's like, oh, I didn't get the chat, but I'm glad to be here for the recap. Right. Or even just a resource that you weren't able to share that, in hindsight, you were like, oh, I should have shared that out so people could have kept exploring.
Yeah, there's so much beautiful work that's already being done. One thing that I leaned on a lot this summer was Ijeoma Oluo's So You Want to Talk About Race. Her book is just absolutely beautiful. And it offers a really intersectional view of all of this, right? Because when we're talking about anti-racism, we're not only talking about our IBPOC students, we're talking about gender, we're talking about gender identity, we're talking about disability, we're talking about mental illness, because no person is one thing, right? That's an Audre Lorde-ism, but her too. No person is one thing. And if we pretend that all of this exists in isolation, no one is going to do better.
No, it's a great perspective. Absolutely. And I hope that everybody listening to this recap really considers that as you find your resource, know that there's always another one, and then there's always another one. And you have to keep being an explorer, a hunter for these resources so we can educate ourselves and also take action. So what part of the chat, if you had to recommend a specific moment or a specific question, if I only had the ability to pop into Mastery Chat that we had tonight for a few minutes, what would you hope that people go and check out, maybe reflect on more, and maybe share their thoughts using the hashtag Mastery Chat? throughout the next few weeks to continue this exploration.
Yeah. Oh gosh, even I have to go back and look now. Like I'm like,
Every
there's
week.
so much insanely good content in there from teachers who are just learning everything that they possibly can. And I'm looking at the Twitter feed now and seeing myself on video. It's really weird. Just this idea that, like there is no finish line, with this work. It will never be done until it's done. Yeah. It will never be done until our Black and Brown and Latinx kids feel safe. Yeah. It will never be done until, we've faced the reality that being actively anti-racist is more important than being afraid of being called racist, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's something that all the time is we're so ready to skirt I don't want to call it an accusation, but we're so ready to just be like, no, that's not me. That's not who I am. Like I treat everyone the same, but that's not what anti-racism is, right? Anti-racism is the act of owning, acknowledging, and dismantling the fact that things are not equal for everybody, and that we all have a part to play in making that stop.
So, Kate, can I ask you, you're a classroom teacher right now in the trenches, just like me. Like we have students that we're serving every day. And are you currently in a remote, hybrid, back in person? What are you at currently with your students?
We're hybrid right now.
Hybrid.
Where I am, yeah.
Perfect. So like we both are interacting with students every single day. How have you chosen to kind of bring this idea into your classroom so it can not only be a conversation you're striving to have with your peers, but maybe also with your students so they can continue to practice anti-racism, discussions?
So this subject, like I said, because it's so close to the work that I do and the person that I am, has always just been the standard. Okay. No matter where I'm teaching, no matter who I'm teaching, who's in front of me. Yeah. We talk about who's in the room, who's not in the room, who has representation here, who doesn't, right? And that's no different this year. Like just because you're sitting in front of a computer screen at your house does not mean you can't read Audre Lorde's foundational essays and have something to garner from them. Because the work, like I said, will be timeless as long as this is continuing to go on. And the work's not done until it's done. So our kids can engage with this, whether they're sitting in my classroom, sitting on a computer, because for some of them, they never stop engaging with it. It's 24/7. They're living it. They're living the inequality. So they can't get out of it. And that's what I, try to drive home, especially with students. Like that's what privilege is, right? Privilege is all the things you don't have to think about. Yeah. And we're going to think about it in this room. That's always been how I teach. And this year will be no different.
Boom. Oh my gosh. I love that. But I know, there's got to be teachers that are sitting back and they're like, well, if you taught history, that would make sense. But if you don't teach history, it's not going to fit in my curriculum. It's not going to fit in my content. What would be your response to an educator that's sitting back and they're being like, oh, I'm a math teacher. I'm a science teacher. I can't teach this right now.
So if you're a math teacher, graph, what our current, like I had a student one year who did an entire project on the environmental racism that goes on in our community. There's a science angle. And then she graphed the use of, or the data that said, this is the illnesses that people are getting in that community because of the environmental racism going on. Math, right? So there's room for this in every area of our curriculum if we want to do that. Like you have to be willing to step outside the humanities box, because that's what I'm an English teacher. Like the humanities box is not the only place where this exists and can be discussed. Like even in the STEM fields, like I just said before, like teaching is a predominantly white profession. STEM, same thing. Why, ask in math class, why aren't there more people of color working in the field that you're looking at right now? Like, why aren't there more people of color graphing things and doing math equations and sending people to the moon? Like that's an important question that we kind of get lost on, because there's the curriculum we need to do. And that creates a hidden curriculum of, in math class, racism is not important, right? It's as if racism stops when you enter your math classroom, and that's not true.
You're right. I love this idea that you need to choose to make it important enough to find a way to incorporate it in your content. I mean, this is not just with anti-racism. This is with anything that you as an educator value. And if you value, like we put time into things that we value. And so really with Mastery Chat and with so many other conversations the Teach Better team is continuously striving to have, anti-racism is a huge focus for us, that we want to make sure that people make the choice to put time into figuring out how this is going to work in your classroom and how you can have appropriate conversations with students and families and stakeholders and community members and everything in between, because teachers are leaders in our communities. And so you have to actively seek out the answers to how it can incorporate it in your content if you're not sure. And the first step could be to ask a question and help us, allow us to help you brainstorm it.
Right. And, even having the kids come up with their own questions, that's been such a powerful tool for me in addressing this, is like, why aren't there more, Black people working in the STEM field? Why aren't there more Latinx women scientists? These are questions that kids have, because again, they're living that. Why aren't there people, if I was a Black child, I'd be like, why aren't there people who look like me doing this thing that I love so much?
Right.
Why do I have to be the first one to do it? Why don't I have any role models, that represent me? That's a question that our kids are asking themselves anyway. So why not just pull the elephant out of the room and talk about it with the entire class? Because some kids who may never have had to think about that might go, oh my God, yeah, there's room for it everywhere if you value it. That's exactly it.
Kate, it's funny. We've been connected for a while, but I didn't realize that this was such a big passion for you. And I guess it just makes me so happy that you are so willing to discuss this, so eager to discuss this, so hungry to help others, because just knowing how active you are in our Teach Better family, I'm like, oh my gosh, now you're just another person that can continue to be a voice to help educators on topics that make them uncomfortable. But too bad it makes you uncomfortable. We got to figure it out anyway. Everything in education, everything that's new for us made us uncomfortable at one period of time. And so this is a time that I'm so excited, Kate, for you to not only continue to do work in this passionate space, but also hopefully have our Teach Better network see that you have people that you're connected to that you can go have these conversations with. And there's no reason to be nervous. The only person that can stop your growth is you. So choose to be a learner. And especially in this area, find somebody to help you continuously grow. Kate, would you mind sharing, whether it be social media or whatever, how people can stay connected to you? How can they kind of reach out to you and continue this conversation? Obviously, they'll look back at Mastery Chat and, hopefully connect with you some other ways to maybe, start their journey or continue their journey wherever they're currently at right now.
Yeah, I'm hugely on Twitter. I love Twitter. I think it's such a great professional learning tool. I book so much PD, unofficial PD on Twitter sometimes. And it's such an engaging place. And I learn so much from people and engage so much with people. So I'm so happy to be on Twitter for anybody who needs me, especially to elevate the people doing this work, who live this work. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm someone who's passionate about it, but there are certain things that don't come with living as me. Every day that, I can't speak to it, but I can refer you to a person who can, because they've already done that labor. And that's the work that I'm proud to do.
Oh, I love that. So important. And if somebody was just popping into this recap, I do want to preface, Mastery Chat happens every single Thursday at 7:00 Central, 8:00 Eastern. We chat for an entire hour. There's always a new host sharing about a passion that they care most about. You can find out all the details at teachbetter.com/masterychat for the questions for the week, the upcoming hosts, all that good stuff. Kate, tell us if you had a wish that anybody who participated in Mastery Chat, you really, really hoped that they would walk away with one key major idea from this week's Mastery Chat. Maybe it was a call to action. Maybe it was a concept or idea. What did you want our participants to walk away with during this week's chat, in hopes that if somebody wasn't able to participate, knowing that this was your mission, they'll go back and hopefully check out all that was discussed?
Keep doing the work. You will mess it up. It's inevitable, but that doesn't make it any less important.
Boom. If that wasn't a mic drop, I don't know what is. Well, Kate, thank you so much for hosting Mastery Chat this week. I told you this before we went live, but truly, I was so excited when I saw your name on the list. I was so thrilled to be able to go live with you afterwards, because I just have started connecting with you, and I hope that this is still only the beginning of being able to connect with you in the work that you're doing. But I just really appreciate that you not only hosted an entire hour chat, but then also came live with me after to chat about it. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, so fun. Loved it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. For everybody else, we hope to see you next week for Mastery Chat, and make sure to stay up to date on everything going on with the Teach Better team by checking out teachbetter.com. And you can see all the blogs being published, the amazing podcast network that just launched, our speakers network that's there, and oh my gosh, just so many things in between. We do have a mindset meetup webinar that I don't know the code off the top of my head, but if you DM me, I'll get you a 50% off code for. So DM me and I'll get you that link. All right. Bye guys. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Bye, Ray. Thank you.